From the corners of the internet to the wave signals in your brain, you have now synced into All Aware. Against the norm, you are expanding your mind and educating your soul. Let the transmissions commence.
Broadcasting off of the grid in Central Texas, this is the All Aware Podcast. Please stand by for your host, Nathan Rishawn.
108 again Sunday afternoon. The combination of hot temperatures and high humidity will combine to create a dangerous situation in which heat illnesses are likely.
We just got done with that A124 must have a squirrel on or something, but see what Scott wanted me to go to next.
So as time goes on, more people are starting to wake up to inconsistencies surrounding the coronavirus, the pandemic, and the control mechanisms that governments, politicians, and others put into place during the 2019-2020 year, all regarding this supposed pandemic that was going on, and how things aren't panning out, and they're starting to see what a lot of the so-called conspiracy theorists saw from the beginning and tried to awaken and get information out to the world, but because the information was outside of the norm, it was, criticized, castrated, critiqued, saw as conspiracy, loony, information. But as time is going on, like all of us who were awakened and aware of what was going on knew, as time goes on, people are starting to see it, and thank God they are. So I haven't done an episode on specifically the coronavirus, the pandemic, and the state of affairs we currently find ourselves in and why it's happening, what exactly is happening as it relates to this engineered pandemic. I haven't felt that it was the right time to give a talk about what's going on, but I think it's that time. So tonight I'm going to talk about, and this is how I see it. This is how I've come to understand it with all the sources that I follow, all the information that I have for the past 15 years. While, my friends and family call me a conspiracy theorist, and I'm ruining my life because I see things differently than the normal person. So I'm not able to enjoy my life like I should. People don't take me seriously. I get it. I knew that. That's why for 15 years, for 10 years, I never said anything about it. I continued living my life how I lived it, and it was just information that I kept to myself and that I had and that I built upon in my mind so that I could figure out for myself how this world operates and what's going on really in the world, because I know, and I think everyone knows to an extent, that what you're told isn't really what's going on. Some of it sounds good, some of it feels good. We want to believe some of it. We want to believe a lot of it, right? So when it comes to the dark, the dirty, the disgusting, the defamation and deceit that happens in the world, we always turn a blind eye. We always plug our ears, and we always dismiss that information and just try to go on with our day-to-day distractions so that we can feel comfortable and so that we can feel safe. But I think it's been approximately 5 years ago, I noticed that things were coming to a head. the boil or the sore was starting to fester and things were starting to seep out of this wound. Things were starting to be known and shown in everyday life that validated the once conspiracy theories that I believed in. And it just further proved to me, as well as a lot of you and others in this world, what you believe is true. And I did not go out and seek this information to validate it. It just naturally came out. It happened. And every time it did, it validated something. The majority of what I'm talking about here is one main conspiracy. And we've talked about that, numerous times in different episodes on this podcast. But what that comes down to is the they that I always refer to. The 13 families that rule the world. The organizations and secret societies that are the enforcers of these individuals and groups that have structured the world how it is. The corporations that are so big, too big to fail, and that's for a reason. It's because they're a part of this and they help reinforce it. And while there are some wild and crazy and just off-the-wall conspiracy theories out there, or just, off-the-wall thinking, I don't like to call them conspiracy theories because the term doesn't really mean anything. It's a made-up term by, the secret societies. Actually, it's was made up by the CIA, actually, for propaganda purposes, so that they can discredit information. And that's exactly what it's used for. So I don't like using that. I like to just say that there is theories out there, or there are lines of thinking that are just crazy and off the wall. So yeah, that does exist. But when it comes to this one huge conspiracy, most of the other little conspiracies can get wrapped up in this one huge conspiracy. And that is how people need to understand it. It's not a lot of little, just random conspiracy theories out there that, are all just some kooky people that just come up with random stuff out of fear or whatever, and they just say this is how things are. When you actually start researching and investigating the conspiracies that are out there, I'm talking about the ones relating to aliens, UFOs, the Men in Black, secret operations, black budget, black projects, how governments were formed, how people or human beings were brought to this earth, who God is, why God is, what God is, what the universe is the earth flat, what are the pyramids for? All of this stuff actually ties in together. That's what makes it more understandable, because once you do the research on each and every one of these conspiracy theories, you can start seeing a correlation. And in science, correlation does not mean causation, right? But it gives scientists, it gives researchers a basis to try and investigate more to figure out what is going on. That's what you got to do here. And that's what I've done for the past 15 years. So when we get back here on All Aware, I'm going to go into my rendition, my understanding of the coronavirus pandemic. And I probably won't get too very deep into every single specific thought process that I have on this. But if you have questions, or if you do want to know why I'm saying a certain, thing, email me. You can email me at allaware@mail.com, or leave a comment on my YouTube page, TrueRantsNet, or go to our website, TrueRantsNet. TrueRants.net, and leave a comment, or you can contact us through that page there, because I'll get back to you and I might do a follow-up if it gets that popular. But when we get back, I'm going to start from the beginning of this coronavirus, tell you exactly what really happened, how it happened, why it happened, and what's going on now, and what is the end game of this. And it's not all dark and dreary. There is some good that can come out of this. But we all have to realize that not everything is what it seems. Not everyone is telling you the truth. And it's going to be up to us to make our world what we want. So stay tuned. We're coming right back here on All Aware. I'm your host, Nathan Roshan. Stay tuned.
You are listening to the All Aware podcast on the TrueRants network.
In 2010, Forbes magazine accurately reported on the WHO's fraudulent response to the swine flu. The Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe declared the false pandemic is one of the greatest medicine scandals of the century. By their own rules, a pandemic requires simultaneous epidemics worldwide with enormous numbers of deaths and illness. 11 weeks into the outbreak, only 144 people died worldwide, and the WHO declared a pandemic. Just 1 month before, they changed the rules. You could now have a pandemic with 0 deaths. And when questioned, they claimed the old rule never existed.
Now, there is some confusion here, and I hope to clarify. Having severe death has never been part of the WHO pandemic.
The WHO director, Dr. Margaret Chan, then went on to push left-wing politics, the redistribution of wealth for equity and social justice, and claimed that a welfare state is the savior of globalism. Over $18 billion was misallocated on this fake pandemic. In 2005, Dr. Peter Doshi published a paper entitled, "Are U.S. Flu Death Figures More PR Than Science?" drawing upon data from the CDC. The CDC bundles together influenza and pneumonia and counts them together, which is strange because according to their own data, there are far more deaths caused by pneumonia than the flu. For example, out of the 62,000 pneumonia and influenza deaths from 2001, only 18 cases were lab-confirmed influenza, 0.03%. From 1979 to 2002, there were an average of 58 influenza deaths per year. In 2004, CDC Director Glenn Nowak gave a presentation wherein he called upon the media to state concern and alarm, predict dire outcomes, and urge influenza vaccination. The Flu Protection Act of 2005 required the Secretary of Health and Human Services to conduct public influenza awareness campaigns preceding every flu season. Sales of the flu vaccine began skyrocketing, bringing in billions of dollars to the manufacturers, all for something that kills, on average, less than 100 people a year. In 2007, the New York Times published an article entitled, "Faith in Quick Test Leads to Epidemic That Wasn't." It explains how the same PCR tests being used now for COVID-19 misdiagnosed over 100 healthcare workers in New Hampshire and rang the bell for a whooping cough epidemic that turned out to just be the common cold. The PCR tests were never meant to detect a specific virus, and yet they are being used today to detect COVID-19. The CDC even admits that the PCR test will detect any viral infection as COVID-19, including the common cold. The current data from the CDC on COVID-19 shows the same fakery that we have seen so far. Just as the CDC falsely counted pneumonia deaths as influenza deaths in the past, they are now counting both pneumonia and influenza as COVID-19. You can see it clearly in the CDC's own data. Beginning in the end of March, right after the shutdown began in the U.S., pneumonia and influenza deaths dropped to zero, just as COVID deaths began to surge. COVID-19 is a quantifiable hoax. After years of unchecked big pharma fraud, we are witnessing their greatest swindle yet. And the amount of people wearing the mask only illustrates how effective their scam is. Will the mask wearers take the experimental vaccine for fear of what amounts to be the common cold? For Infowars.com, this is Greg Reese.
And welcome back to All Aware. Again, I am Nathan Roshan, and tonight we're talking about the coronavirus pandemic. And I'm going to give you what my rendition, based on my sources and my formulations and my understanding for the past 15 years of following different conspiracies and basically what I call, honestly, it's the truth, but we've been indoctrinated for so long by our educational system, by our colleges, by our media, by our programming on television, by our family, by our friends, by our work, our careers, our jobs, the corporations that run the world, the families, the kings, the queens, the presidents, the magistrates, whoever, whatever, right? It's all been geared to see a certain thing a certain way. So before I go off on a crazy tangent on that, because I have to check myself, because I will, let me go back and let's talk right now about the coronavirus. So back in 2019, kind of a year before the coronavirus happened, there was an event. It was called Event 201. And it was actually took place only 4 months or so before we started hearing about this coronavirus, SARS-CoV-2. And the event took a virus. It was supposed to be role-playing. It involved several first world countries. It involved militaries. It involved corporations that are categorized as medical, pharmaceutical, or emergency response. And it was like a whole drawn-out thing where they actually went and met in meetings. They had mock news reports done. They made it as real as possible for everybody involved in this thing. And it all had to do with how would you respond to a global crisis of a pandemic level with a virus. And this went on where they had a book, or a program, you should say, and it had 4 or 5 different responses or ways they can respond to a crisis like that. And it had, well, first of all, the book was written, and like I said, I'm going to try to be a little bit general here, but I have no problem giving you more details. It's just that I'm trying to get this out on as many platforms as I can. And if you get too specific, in this day of censorship, it's really easy for this to be shut down or deplatformed or whatever you want to call it. And I'm not into that. I don't want to do that. I want this to get out there, and I want you to kind of use your brain too to kind of maybe figure out who I'm talking about, and what I'm talking about. So get back to it. It was made, this manual was made by a certain philanthropist and his team, or organization, I guess you would say. And that organization, that group, ties back to a global commission or health organization that is very influential in the way that the entire world views healthcare and views pharmaceuticals, and is supposedly in place to better regulate the health of the American and world population. And there was a certain person that was associated with this group that was able to somehow obtain a position within the United States government where he had even more influence on how you would respond to something like this. And in the Trump administration, he was involved in the medical team that gave President Trump his information and his recommendations. And of course, everybody else in the world followed these recommendations. These guys meet in rooms. And anyways, let me get back to it. That was this event, okay? And everybody was a part of it that was involved, okay? Coincidentally enough, 3 months later, we start hearing about a crazy virus that just seems to be spreading like wildfire across the world. And this virus started in a place called Wuhan, China. Now, Wuhan, China, this little area of the Asian continent, has first off, it's said that Chinese are a little different with their food choices. And there's a market in this Chinese area that deals in the exotic food choices that exist on this planet. Things like snake and bats, raccoons, and who knows whatever else they have. Blowfish. I don't know what else. I don't live over there. But they deal in the exotic food market. And at first we were told that something has happened and they think it's come from a bat, and someone must have ate a bat and they got sick and then they spread it, and now there's this crazy virus. It's a SARS virus. It's a coronavirus, which the coronavirus family is most of the viruses that we deal with as humans on this planet. It's not anything new, right? There's MERS, there's the first SARS, the avian flu, the Spanish flu, whatever the flu is that we call now. What is it? H1N1, H1N2, H2N1, whatever. There's so many different ones. They're all categorized, right? Those are all coronaviruses, and we deal with them every day, all the time, and it's fine. There's treatments. There's we have Tamiflu and Z-Paks and different things here in the United States that we use, and in other places they have other things for more severe and different versions of these coronaviruses, like hydroxychloroquine. And I always pronounce the name wrong, but it starts with an R. Reprevol. I'm gonna say, sorry, I butchered that name, but there's things out there that manage these, treat these, and even in a way cure these, if you want to use that term. You can't really cure a virus because a virus is dead when it's in you. Viruses aren't living things. They're dead. It's dead DNA. It's a dead organism that's in you. What you respond to, your body responds to that as a foreign object, ramps up its immune system, and you actually, typically in most of these, are responding to the threat of a foreign entity within your biological makeup more than actually the virus is affecting you. That's why there's kind of cures or kind of treatments that kind of basically what they do is mask or teach your body that what's going on is fine, just to let it pass, and it kind of reignites the normal processes in your body so that you can continue on living. And then 2, 3, 4, 6 weeks later happens, the thing's processed through your body, and you're good to go. You don't think about it, you go back to your daily lives, and everything's good again. But this time, let me go back to I want to try to stay specifically on task here. So we're going back to the lab. Nope, we're not at the lab yet, sorry. We're going back to the market. So they tell us that this virus comes from a market. They're showing us terrifying pictures and images from Wuhan, China. People are in biohazard suits, going up and down the streets, sanitizing the roadways, spraying some kind of chemical on buildings and on the ground and in rooms, and like completely delousing the entire town. They're boarding up windows and doors and trapping people inside and saying that they're infected and that they're gonna cause more deaths and destruction if they're out. So they're literally locking people inside of their homes and in these buildings. They're like tackling people in the streets, in the subways, and the buses, and they're arresting them and they're taking them somewhere. We later find out that it's an entirely new hospital, or air quotes hospital, that they built for this specific reason, by the way, which they built in like 24 to 36 hours, an entire hospital. You can look this up. There was pictures on it. And this hospital has bars on the window, first of all, which is kind of weird if you think about it. Why do they need bars on all the windows if this thing's a hospital? It's not a psych ward. It's not some kind of facility to hold criminals or people who have done something wrong or pose a risk to the general public. These are just people that supposedly come down with a sickness and they need treatment, right? We'll keep going. So this is all happening. The media is spreading this throughout the world, and we're getting freaked out. It's now February 2019, and we start getting the first hints of a virus that is spreading across the world, and it's even in America now. We're having pop-ups in different states, and everybody's wondering what to do. And then, like always, the amazing governments of the world, in association with apparently the most amazing organizations in the world, which is the WHO, the NIHS, whatever alphabetical agencies you want to name, the UN, all these agencies that are supposed to help mankind, come up with a brilliant idea that we're going to need to lock down all the societies. We're going to need to mask everyone up because masks stop viruses, apparently. And we're just going to have to lay low, and we're just going to have to let this thing ride out. Which, if you think back, how in the hell is that ever going to work? So because you make people stop moving and not doing anything, and everyone's locked in their home, and we shut down society, the virus goes away? Okay. So the virus is just out there with consciousness, just roaming down the streets, and it just looks around and says, man, there's no people around. This isn't fun. I'm bored. I guess I'll just fucking die. Right? I mean, seriously. Let me continue. So societies across the world begin to do this. Everyone locks down. Everyone grabs masks. They start pumping out ventilators to all societies because one of the reported responses to this or symptoms is shortness of breath or the inability to breathe, the inability to get oxygen in your lungs. So what they choose to do is ventilate people who show up to the hospital and say they have coronavirus. Now, before I continue, let me backtrack a little bit back to Wuhan. So we talked about what they told us was going down, but there's two sides to every story. So let me fill in that other side. And again, this is not, I haven't been specifically told this by any one person. There isn't one person who has come down here and said, hey, Nathan, this is what really happened. This is what I've gathered over the 15 years of dealing with conspiracies and then seeing a lot of that stuff come to life when this whole thing began after that event 201, which, remember that's kind of weird, right? There's no coincidences in this world. There seems like it, but there's not. Anyway, so let's go back to the very beginning. What really happened? There was a virus. Well, it's not a virus. That's a terrible way to say it. There was a biological weapon. There was a biological weapon that was released by a laboratory in Wuhan who happened to be studying coronaviruses and other things and making biological weapons. And there's no way that I can possibly know how this got out. Is it intentional? It could be. Maybe someone was just carrying a briefcase that had this potent, very deadly, and disturbing biological weapon down the street. Maybe he got hit by a bus and it fell and broke open. I don't know. But there was that. There was a biological weapon. And it got out. And the biological weapon wreaked hell on Wuhan, China. So when you saw on video and in photos and on social media, and you've talked to friends and family and whoever else who may have contacts there or were there, and they say, holy God, there's something crazy going on here. This is serious. They weren't lying. It was serious. And when they were delousing the streets and spreading bleach or whatever chemical they had all over the buildings and inside the buildings and locking people inside and literally letting them die inside and arresting people on the street and, decontaminating them and putting them in this hospital with bars on the window, that's why. Because there was something that got out. It was a biological weapon, and it was deadly. And it eats your insides. It eats you from the inside out. And they had to stop it. And people really did die. And I feel terrible. And I think all of us feel terrible for anybody that has lost their lives in this entire thing. My aunt is one of them. But that's a whole nother story that we're not at yet. So we're going to go back. So that's what really happened. And they stopped it. And it could have been over. It could have been over in the summer of 2019. But there was other forces at play that wanted this to happen. And like I said, maybe it happened on purpose. Maybe that biological weapon was supposed to be released so that they can use it to do just that, what they've done. To say that was spreading across the world and taking, everybody out, or it could be a potential deadly virus. But instead, and thank God for this, we all have to literally thank God that it was somehow stopped, foiled, cleaned up, whatever, to where it couldn't affect the entire world. But what they did after that was they took a new variant of a common virus, SARS-CoV-2, and they replaced that biological weapon with that. Now, when I say replace, I don't mean that they sent this thing out all over the world, to affect people. Follow my thinking here for a second. They didn't necessarily release anything. What they did is they took something that was already occurring, that was a new variant, a new strain, just like we get new flu viruses every year. We get, there's always viruses, always, every day. There's millions of viruses around us all the time. Our bodies are meant to fend them off. That's what our immune system's for. And so what they did was they took this virus that was already occurring naturally in society, and they replaced that biological weapon with it in the news, in the medical fields. And they just did kind of like a switch. I don't know, the bait and switch, I guess, right? They baited us and they switched the bait. It's not really the biological weapon, thank God. It's coronavirus. And then they started to do their plan. And their plan is the same plan that they had in World War II. When I say they, I'm talking about the secret societies. I'm talking about the 13 ruling families. I'm talking about those who have over thousands and thousands of years, these types of people, these organizations, these families, these corporations have gained global dominance. Sounds weird? It's not weird. And I'm going to hopefully remember to tell you here in a little bit why that is. So their goal is to, the same thing it was in World War II, the same thing it was in the Roman Empire, the same thing it's always been. And it's, in my favorite way of saying it, from my favorite cartoon when I was a child is, you guys have heard of Pinky and the Brain, right? What do you want to do today, Brain? The same thing we always do, Pinky. Try and take over the world. Right? That's it. They just want control of everything, and this was their new way of getting it. It was the Nazis in World War II that were on this war path and that wanted to control everything through fear and through the tactics that they used. And now here we go, almost 1940, almost 100 years later, 80 years later, they're trying the same thing again, just more modern, with different, a little bit of a switch on the tactics. But honestly, it's the same rule book. It's the same playbook. It's something called Operation Lockstep. And if you want to know more about that, you can go ahead and look it up. But that's along the lines of what this playbook says. Another book is Mein Kampf. I'm sure you've heard of that. Hitler wrote it. It talks a little bit about his psyche, his mindset, and why that happened the way it did, right? But it goes back farther beyond this. And we don't have enough time in this podcast, and I wouldn't have enough time in a year to explain to you how all this ties in, but it does. And it's out there for you to get. And there's a great documentary. If you go on my BitChute channel, it's TrueRants Network. I think you can just go on bitchute.com, bitchute.com, and type in TrueRants Network. I have saved many documentaries on there that are talking about some of the stuff I'm talking about tonight, but it gives you a good kind of wake-up call of how this stuff ties in, and I encourage you to check that out, and then it might catch you up a little bit on what I'm saying. But to keep going, so the idea was to just kind of take over the world, control all aspects of it. And the reason why they want to do it right now is because we're in a technological kind of evolution period where things are going to change real fast. There have actually been held back for so long. We are so technologically advanced right now. None of us on the surface population that are not involved in these black projects, secret budget kind of deals, technology development, sessions and things like that are not involved in that and don't listen to that stuff, we would have no idea, and we don't have any idea. But we are so technologically advanced right now that we can literally cure every disease. Yep. Yeah, we can. We can literally go to planets that aren't even in our solar system. Yep, we can. I know, it's another conspiracy, right? We can listen and surveil anyone on this planet at any time for any reason and meta collect that data. And they do. We can literally solve almost probably every problem that we have on this planet. We can absolutely solve hunger. We can solve any basic need problem. We can solve housing. We can solve any transportation issues, and we can even solve things that we're doing to the environment or the nature that is negatively affecting the planet. We can. But there's no money in that. Just like there's no money in curing a disease. There's no money in permanently fixing any problem in society. But we're so technologically advanced right now that it's starting to just seep out because there's just so much stuff that they're holding back from us. And things are seeping out, and they can't keep it quiet forever, and they really don't want to. They're getting tired of that game. They're getting tired of holding back all this stuff and having to make up all this bullshit to try to keep things on the wraps when they actually need it. We need it out here. Just like we have the internet now, right? They had that long before we even knew about it. And it was being used in the military. It was being used secretly by certain sections of the population. And then we got it. And that was probably the first thing that they regret now because it backfired and now it's uncontrollable. It's a huge web and you can't shut it down because there's too many servers. There's too many people that know how to keep it up, and it's all been outsourced. So anyways, continue on to this. So that is kind of what they want to do, and the technology's even out, so they want to control it. Okay, so how are they going to control it, and how are they going to control our basic needs? How are they going to control what we do, think, say, who we are? How are they going to control everything so that they feel almighty because they think they are better than everyone else? Well, the same way they always do. There's only one way to be evil, and that's to take from everybody else. But there's 1,000 ways to be a good person. You can listen to somebody. You can give somebody a hug. You can give somebody money. You can help somebody cross the street. You can do there's so many different avenues of how you can be a decent, good human being or person. But there's always only one way to be evil, because the only thing that evil does is take and scare and intimidate. So that's another way you can tell them from us, or good from evil, because there's love and then there's that. Anyways, we keep going. So we keep moving. Now it's summer of 2019. It's the winter of 2019, and nope, that's 2020. Sorry, I get my dates messed up. It feels like it's been going on forever. In 2020, the gig is up because there's a group of intelligence operatives that know everything. Because remember I told you that there's all this technology they're withholding? Well, some of that technology got into the hands of those who are what I call white hats, or those who are on the side of good, on the side of love, on the side of humanity, on the side of I just want to live my life abundantly with my friends and family, and I just want to be left alone, and I just want to love. And these people have access to some of that technology. And one of those things is something called a quantum computer. And a quantum computer is a device that is, infinitively better than anything we've ever come up with in the history of existence. It's like 1,000,000 times better than a person's own mind. A quantum computer can see patterns, rhythms. It knows literally at this point everything that humanity has pretty much done from past, present, and because of that, it can very accurately predict the future. And they've been feeding this thing for decades. Everything that has ever gone on the internet, I would assume, is in this thing. Any knowledge, events that have happened, people, their contributions and what they've done, and anything and everything has gone into this thing. And so this quantum computer is used by the white hats to try to anticipate what's going to happen. And they found out that, well, the end game was near. We've come to the time where we're so technologically advanced, and so far it's mostly all in the hands of people that do not have your best interest in mind, that we're either going to get destroyed or we're going to make this thing right. And we're going to turn this world around, because nothing lasts forever. Everything is in cycles. And the cycle that we've been on is a cycle of destruction. It's a cycle built on hate, built on selfishness, built on taking and taking and taking. In other words, in my definition, built on evil. And at some point, that is got to stop. So the way God, or the way the universe takes care of it, is it just completely destroys that. But there's too many good souls on this planet and in this universe and in this galaxy and in this galactic federation and however else you want to describe it. And everything's connected. So we don't want it destroyed. We don't deserve to have it destroyed because we're not making the decisions typically that we make in our lives because we willingly and willfully know what's going on. We make our decisions based on the information and the programming we've received. So we're making the information we're making the decisions not knowing truly what we're doing. In the King James Version of the Bible, it says, "Then said Jesus, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do." That speaks loud to what I'm talking about right here. Forgive them, for they do not know what they do. Yes, that is what's happening. Most people are not understanding what's going on. So they're making decisions and they're living lives based on what they think is right, based on what their programming says. That is not the fault of any individual soul or any individual person. So, Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they do. So, to get back to the pandemic. So this goes on through 2020, and they get stronger, and they enforce more regulations and rules. They try to lock down everything even harder all across the world because everybody has to be on the same page. Because the end goal here is that they come out the victor and they control all aspects of society, and we have no way of changing that. And that's would be how it would be pretty much for eternity. Because at that point, they would have reached total domination and they would have stripped any tools and abilities for others that do not toe the line or do not have their same mindset from achieving anything. So it would just be how it was. So that was the plan. Now, again, there are people who actually are good, who have access to devices and technologies and things, and they know things because they may have been involved in some of these societies. They may have been involved in some of these governments. They may have been involved directly with some of these families. But they grew a conscience, they grew a heart, and they said, you know what? If I have to risk my life to save the world, then that's what I'll do. And in most cases, that's what they did. And so we still sit here in April of 2021, but we're coming out of that destruction. It didn't go necessarily as planned, and it's at the point where it will never go 100% as it was planned. The truth is starting to come out. People are waking up. And maybe they don't see all of this. Maybe they don't see everything. But they see that it isn't panning out. The lies that have been told, the things that have been done, it doesn't add up. They have exposed themselves because they got so desperate in their attempts to make this happen quickly and now that they were a little loose around the edges and some of their plans fell out and people took note. And then people followed up. And then people shared what happened. And then we all started to see. And there was some people along the way who were told to you were terrible people. That were these people that did no good. And that were frauds. And that were against you. And that were racist. But if you look back, who began the race riots? Who pitted us against each other? Who was it that funded these groups who have destroyed lots of cities, or at least attempted to, and had killed and maimed people in the United States and abroad, who were the people who cried and moaned and forced you to believe what they are saying simply because they say it's so, and quite openly, declared that you are to respond a certain way because they are your masters. Didn't say it in that way, but basically said, we know what's best, follow what we do. Follow what we say, not what we do. And then weird things in the world happen, events. A boat gets stuck sideways in a canal that blocks every single other transportation vessel basically in the entire world because they all have access through there. They all need to go through there to complete their deliveries or pick up their items or whatever, because we're a global economy now. We have been for a very long time. So this new world order, this Green New Deal, these things they come up with are not necessary. They're not what you think they are, because we already are that way. They're just ways to control. And we don't need a certain politician, a certain government, a certain group to live how we want to live. If you want to live a green energy lifestyle, you can live that right now. If you want to start a green energy company, you can do that right now. We don't need someone, some organization, some force to tell us that's where we need to go. We will naturally evolve to what we choose to be as a collective, as humanity. We don't need interference. We don't need someone telling us the right way to be. We are not ignorant. We are not stupid. We collectively are one people. And collectively, we are love. We are made in the image of God. However you see that, it doesn't change that statement. We are made in the image of a creator. Therefore, are we not that creator in a way? So on our way out of this, as we continue to clear through this world event that is literally probably going to be the most insane thing that has happened in this world in, I wouldn't even guess the amount of years. We are living in a time where, if I get spiritual here, I'll tell you that we've all chosen to be here for certain reasons, and we're all at certain levels of our development. And whether we have been manipulated, brainwashed, or whatever the case may be to not see it, your soul always knows why you're here. And it is my hope, and it is my dream, and it is my literally belief that we're going to come out on top, and it's going to be sooner than later. And the world that we're going to decide to create for all of us is going to be the most beautiful, abundant, happy, joyous, amazing place that you can ever dream of. Because we're going to eliminate all the problems that we don't need to deal with. Hunger, homelessness, medical issues. Not going to be an issue. You're going to be able to live normal length lives. And normal length lives aren't 60, 70, 80. They're like 150, 200 years old. And see, if the other side got their way, you would still live that long. See, that's the difference. What's going to happen was going to happen regardless. They're not fighting for a certain future. They're fighting for control of the future. Is it going to be in the hands of the people, of the citizens, of humanity, or is it going to be in control of the same entities that have ran it for eons? That's what the fight is really about, because we're going to have the same things, but on the other side, they would control who gets it, and you can believe it's be the same as it is now, where the elite few, 0.00001%, will have access to all this stuff, and the other, 99%, 0.999, 99.9999% will have access to whatever they choose that to be at the time. But we say no. God says no. Our friends on other planets and universes and galactic areas say no as well. Because we are one. We are love. We have a right to know the truth. We have a right, a God-given right, to live our lives out in harmony and in joy and in peace and with lots of love. And I hope I was able to kind of help wake you up a little bit when we're talking about this coronavirus pandemic that's happened since 2019 through 2021. And turn off the media, turn off the television. Don't let fear control you. If someone is telling you something and your immediate reaction is fear, look a little bit closer at what they're saying, because, and specifically if they're trying to tell you to do something, but the way it was delivered gave you fear, that's manipulation. That isn't honesty. So do not let fear control you. Let love control you.
We're coming up on the clock here, so I'm going to go ahead and sign off here pretty soon, but I'm going to do a part 2 for subscribers, and we're going to go a little bit more into the pandemic. We're going to talk about the stolen election and what happened there. We're going to talk a little bit about masks and the whole thing with that, and the PCR tests. Some of you might be asking, why did people die? If this thing was not real, why did people die? So we're going to talk about the PCR test, and we'll also get into the vaccine. So if you're interested in hearing more from me, subscribe to my channel and tune into the exclusive part 2 that I'm going to be offering for my members and my fans.
And you have listened to another episode of All Aware. And I know it was a little different this time, but I wanted to get this episode in there to hopefully open some eyes to things that are going on. If you have any questions, please email me at allaware@mail.com, and you can visit the website TrueRants.net, and you can click on shows. You can find All Aware that way, and you can listen to us anywhere you can listen to podcasts. We are on iTunes podcast. We are on iHeartRadio. We are on Stitcher. We are on literally anywhere that you can find a podcast. So until next time, I am Nathan Roshan, and you are All Aware. Good night.